In 1968, the United States Mint found itself at a turning point in coin production, balancing the pressures of growing demand with the recent changes brought about by the Coinage Act of 1965. Silver had been removed from dimes in favor of a copper-nickel-clad composition, a decision that aimed to save costs and preserve the nation's dwindling silver reserves. The Denver Mint and the newly reactivated San Francisco Mint worked alongside Philadelphia to produce millions of Roosevelt dimes, which had become an unassuming fixture of everyday life. Among the countless coins struck that year, nearly all followed the new standards without flaw. But quietly, buried in the churn of production, one unusual mistake slipped through unnoticed. The presses at Philadelphia were tasked with striking millions of coins quickly, and it was there that this particular dime was born. A simple oversight or a mechanical quirk left behind a unique and rare error, a subtle flaw so easily overlooked that it traveled into circulation without raising a single eyebrow. It clinked into bags, moved into rolls, and sat in cash drawers like any other coin of its kind. The significance of this anomaly would remain hidden for years, waiting for someone with patience and a keen eye to recognize its rarity. Years later, a longtime collector named James Rowe sat at his workbench on a chilly winter evening, unwrapping rolls of older coins he'd picked up at a local estate sale. He enjoyed sifting through these forgotten rolls, a quiet ritual that gave him the rare thrill of possibility. Most of what he saw were ordinary, worn nickels, tarnished quarters, the usual. But halfway through a roll of dimes dated 1968, one piece caught his attention. Its surface gleamed with an unusually sharp strike, and the inscription seemed to ripple ever so slightly as he tilted it under his lamp. James peered closer through his magnifier, his breath catching just slightly. The word "Liberty" on the obverse showed faint doubling at the edges, and Roosevelt's profile had an eerie, almost ghostly outline along his jaw and neckline. Flipping the coin, he noted that "United States of America" and "1 dime" on the reverse also showed this strange doubling, with subtle distortion around the torch's flame and olive branch. At first he wondered if it was just die fatigue or damage, but the evenness of the doubling and the crispness of the rest of the strike told him otherwise. This was something different. He set it aside carefully, checking it against others from the same roll, but none displayed the same peculiarity. His heart began to race as he thumbed through reference guides and scoured online forums, searching for mention of a 1968 double die dime. The weeks that followed brought a mixture of anxious waiting and cautious hope. James sent the coin off to a respected grading service for authentication, unable to stop thinking about what they might find. When the coin returned, slabbed and labeled as a 1968 Roosevelt dime, dramatic double die obverse and reverse, MS-65, his hands trembled as he held it. His instincts had been right all along. He'd uncovered a rare and striking variety that few collectors had ever seen in person. Word of his discovery began to ripple through numismatic circles. Collectors and dealers alike were stunned, not only by the existence of such a dramatic double die on a modern dime, but also by its sharpness and eye appeal. A few more examples surfaced in the months that followed, though none quite as well preserved. Most had been marred by circulation or bore heavy contact marks, making James's find even more desirable. The market responded slowly at first. Early sales of lower-grade examples fetched only modest premiums, but as awareness of the error grew and as collectors competed to secure high-grade pieces, the price began to climb. Auction houses began to feature the coin prominently, and bidding wars soon erupted over the finest examples. What fascinated collectors even more than the price, however, was the coin itself. The doubling on Roosevelt's profile gave him a slightly shadowed look, as though caught mid-motion. The reverse's flame and olive branch seemed to shimmer with extra depth, and the inscriptions carried an almost spectral echo. Some speculated that a misaligned hub or a rare mechanical slip had produced the error, but no definitive explanation was ever agreed upon. Then came an unexpected revelation that added another layer of intrigue. A collector in California unearthed a variant of the error that not only showed the doubling but also featured a faint die crack running through the date, a quirk that made his specimen one of a kind and further cemented the error's mystique. The possibility of even more undiscovered variety sent another wave of collectors back to their own dimes, searching for overlooked treasures. The story of the 1968 double die dime continued to grow, becoming a coveted piece in modern collections and a reminder that even in the era of clad coinage, extraordinary mistakes could still happen. James's discovery had sparked a quiet revolution among collectors of Roosevelt dimes, elevating the series beyond its humble reputation. Today, the 1968 double-die Roosevelt dime stands as one of the most sought-after errors of its kind. Depending on grade and strike clarity, examples of this elusive coin have sold at auction for prices ranging from $54,000 to an astounding $132,000, proving that even the smallest coin can carry a story, and a value, that no one saw coming. In 1976, the United States stood in the glow of celebration, marking its bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of American independence. Fireworks illuminated skies, commemorative memorabilia flooded the market, and the U.S. Mint leaned into the occasion with specially designed coins for quarters, half dollars, and dollars. But amid the patriotic surge and the focus on bicentennial editions, certain coins were struck with far less fanfare. The humble Roosevelt dime, unchanged in design since its debut in 1946, quietly continued production in its standard form. No special bicentennial design. No major attention. Just business as usual. The Denver and Philadelphia mints were churning out dimes at high volumes to meet growing circulation demands. Their machines roared with unrelenting pace, and workers oversaw the process with practiced efficiency. But in a system moving millions of pieces through dies and presses, the smallest lapse could birth something unexpected. And that year, amid the metallic blur of clad coinage, one such lapse occurred, one that would hide in plain sight for decades before a sharp-eyed collector brought it into the light. It wasn't until the fall of 2011 when an aging numismatist named Richard Halston sat at his worn wooden desk, poring over a batch of dimes purchased at a rural coin show in Kansas. He had made a modest career collecting overlooked varieties and errors, often digging through dealer junk bins and old rolls that most had written off. This time was no different, just a pile of circulated 1970s dimes he picked up for face value. Yet something about one particular coin stood out. The date read 1976, but Roosevelt's face looked different. He brought his loupe closer. There was a doubling effect, not obvious, but undeniable, starting at Roosevelt's eye and curling across the bridge of his nose. The Liberty inscription to the left had a faint but curious shadow, especially around the B and E. Richard flipped the coin to examine the reverse. The torch, always the centerpiece of the design, shimmered with fine doubling along the flame's edge and the olive branch. United States of America seemed thicker than usual in some spots, almost like it had been echoed by a ghost strike. He froze. He'd seen thousands of dimes over his career, but never one that presented this level of clarity in such a subtle error. Could it be a double die? Could it be genuine? Not willing to jump to conclusions, he set the coin aside and compared it to 10 other 1976 dimes from the same batch. None had the same characteristics. Most looked worn, unimpressive. Only this one had the hallmarks of a true error. Richard contacted a friend at a regional coin club and arranged to have the coin examined under advanced magnification. Under the microscope, the evidence became irrefutable. It wasn't post-mint damage. It wasn't strike doubling. The doubling was from the die itself, clean and raised on the coin, consistent with the motion of hub misalignment during die creation. Even the coin's mint luster remained intact, suggesting it had seen little circulation. Richard's pulse quickened. He sent it off to a reputable third-party grading service, barely sleeping until the verdict returned. The coin was officially authenticated and encapsulated. 1976 Roosevelt dime, double die obverse and reverse, MS-66. News traveled quickly, first among regional clubs and then on online forums. Collectors were stunned. A double-die Roosevelt dime from a non-bicentennial series, hidden during one of the most heavily scrutinized coin years, was almost poetic in its irony. As attention swarmed around quarters and dollars with special designs, a quiet marvel had gone unnoticed in everyday change. At first, skeptics downplayed the find. Was it a fluke? A one-off? But within the next 2 years, 2 more examples surfaced, one in Indiana, another in Arizona. Neither was in as high a grade as Richard's, but both showed the same obverse and reverse doubling. The error was no longer theoretical. It had a footprint. Small, yes, but undeniable. Auction houses began to feature the 1976 era dime in specialty sales. Prices started conservatively, low five figures. But with each passing year, as Roosevelt dime varieties gained more respect in numismatic circles, demand surged. Collectors who once dismissed modern-clad coinage now looked again, wary of missing the next hidden gem. Richard's original find came to be known as the Bicentennial Ghost, a nickname referencing its overlooked origin in a year of so much attention elsewhere. What captivated numismatists even more was the irony. A coin from a historic year with no special design became special because of a rare and beautiful error. It wasn't supposed to stand out. But it did. And not by design, but by accident. More revelations followed. A few coins with partial die rotation appeared, introducing speculation that a faulty die pair may have operated for longer than expected. One example even displayed a light cut near the rim, a raised lump caused by a piece of the die breaking off. Though not officially related to the doubling, it added character to a year already bursting with patriotic symbolism. Collectors started re-evaluating 1976 Roosevelt dimes across all mint marks. Some paid premiums for rolls sealed in that year, hoping lightning might strike twice. While a small handful of additional examples emerged, none rivaled Richard's original specimen, which still held the highest known grade and the clearest, most balanced doubling. The story of the 1976 double die dime became more than just a tale of error. It embodied the core of collecting: patience, curiosity, and the thrill of the unexpected. It stood as a symbol that even in years saturated with noise and spectacle, some treasures whisper rather than shout. Today, collectors who are lucky enough to possess one of these rare 1976 Roosevelt dimes hold more than a valuable error. They hold a contradiction to the year's most public narrative. These coins, born in the shadows of the bicentennial celebration, command extraordinary prices based on condition and clarity of the error. At auction, they have achieved values ranging from $48,000 to a breathtaking $120,000, all thanks to a twist of fate that left Roosevelt's face and the national torch slightly blurred, but unforgettable. The year was 1995, a time when the United States Mint was operating at full pace to meet the demands of a growing economy. The country's coinage was as reliable as ever, with billions of dimes, quarters, and cents flowing out of the Philadelphia and Denver facilities. For the Roosevelt dime, nothing about that year seemed remarkable at first glance. The same enduring design, unchanged since 1946, carried on quietly through the presses, churning out tens of millions of coins without much notice or ceremony. Yet somewhere along the production lines, deep in the heart of the Philadelphia Mint, an unnoticed flaw crept into the process. A single working die, slightly misaligned during the hubbing phase, would create a subtle doubling effect, barely perceptible to the casual eye, yet significant enough to change the story of at least one unsuspecting dime. No alarms were raised. No quality checks caught it. The coins left the mint in bags and rolls, indistinguishable from millions of others destined for cash registers, pockets, and piggy banks. Years passed before anyone noticed. The 1995 Roosevelt dimes circulated widely, spending their lives in ordinary transactions, most wearing down from use. But tucked away in a forgotten roll sat a coin that defied the ordinary. It wasn't until 2009 that a small-time collector named Denise Callahan stumbled upon it. She was no stranger to the joys of roll searching, often passing long winter evenings with boxes of dimes and nickels from her local bank. That particular evening she'd opened a sealed roll of 1990s-era dimes, hoping for nothing more than a few high-grade pieces to add to her album. One by one she inspected them under her loupe, setting aside the cleaner examples and discarding the worn. Then she saw it. The date caught her attention, not because it read 1995, but because of how it appeared. The 1 and the 9 in the date looked doubled, as if a faint shadow of themselves clung beside them. Liberty seemed slightly thicker in some spots, with subtle but undeniable doubling visible on the B and E. Flipping the coin over, Denise gasped. The torch on the reverse had what appeared to be a faint echo of flame curling along its right side. Even the words, United States of America, showed tiny ridges where there should have been only clean, sharp letters. Her hands shook as she set it down, heart thumping. At first, she thought it might be mechanical doubling, a common and relatively worthless effect. But the way the doubled features rose cleanly above the field, fully formed and crisp, hinted at something far more important. Denise spent the next few days researching, reaching out to online forums and local numismatists. The responses were mixed at first: skeptical, curious, intrigued. She sent the coin to a well-respected grading service, unable to sleep while it was away. When the coin came back, encapsulated in clear plastic with the label reading, 1995 Roosevelt dime, double die obverse and reverse, MS-67, her doubts melted into a mixture of relief and exhilaration. Word of the find spread quickly, and collectors began to pay attention. For decades, error hunters had focused on the now famous 1995 double die Lincoln cent, a dramatic and well-documented variety that turned heads and commanded premiums. But no one had ever seriously considered the possibility of a double die dime from the same year. The market response was immediate but measured. At first, some thought Denise's coin might be a one-off anomaly. But as others began searching, a handful of additional examples came to light, though most were in lower grades or less distinct than hers. Auction houses noted the discovery with cautious enthusiasm, featuring it in specialized error sales. Collectors who had dismissed Roosevelt dimes as bland suddenly found themselves combing through 1995 rolls in search of hidden treasure. Prices began climbing slowly at first, enough to turn heads but not enough to ignite frenzy. Over the years, as more collectors and dealers recognized the rarity and distinctiveness of the error, its value grew. Denise's original discovery remained the highest-graded known example for a long time, cementing her find as a benchmark in the error coin world. What fascinated collectors most about the 1995 double die dime was its quiet defiance. It existed in the shadow of the famous cent from the same year, but to trained eyes, its doubling was just as elegant, just as sharp, and arguably even more elusive. It told a story of overlooked details and the reward of patience, a coin hiding in plain sight while everyone looked elsewhere. One unexpected twist emerged in 2017, when another collector unearthed a 1995 double die dime that featured not only the doubling but also a light die clash on the reverse, an imprint of Roosevelt's profile faintly visible behind the torch. Though this was almost certainly a separate incident rather than part of the double die variety, it added intrigue and renewed interest in examining 1995 dimes more closely. Today, collectors of modern era coins regard the 1995 double die dime as a prize worth chasing, especially in high grades where its value shines brightest. The story of its discovery reminds us all that even in the age of mass production and sophisticated quality control, mistakes can slip through the cracks, and those mistakes can become cherished artifacts of history. At auction, the 1995 double die Roosevelt dime has achieved impressive results, depending on grade and clarity of the error. Values have ranged from $40,000 to an astonishing $108,000, a testament to the enduring allure of a quiet mistake that refused to be ordinary.